Hey guys! Tonight, we drift back into a world where every road whispered secrets and every shadow held stories long forgotten. We're traveling through the dust-blown passages of ancient Persia, not with armies or kings, but with the slow-moving caravans that stitched the empire together. It's not a glamorous ride. This isn't a tale of silk and gold without cost. It's the reality of life along Persia's harshest trade routes, where the heat bit harder than swords, and survival often came down to how tightly your sandals held together. Before we get too far down this worn path of history, just take a moment for yourself. If you enjoy these sleepy history journeys, maybe tap the like button or subscribe, but only if it truly feels right for you. And if you're up for it, leave a little comment. Let me know where in the world you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. It's always lovely seeing how this calm little circle of listeners stretches across countries and continents. Now dim the lights around you, maybe turn on a fan, let that soft hum become your companion. Settle back, let the day slip behind you. The sun is low over the edge of the Zagros Mountains. The light is more rust than gold, casting shadows that stretch like sleeping camels across the dry earth. You're part of a merchant caravan now, not a leader, not even an owner. Just one of many dusty souls helping guide animals and goods from Susa to the far edges of the empire. The wind is still, but everything smells faintly of leather, dust and spice, stirred into the dry air by tired hooves and sun-warmed wool. The animals grunt, their breath steams slightly from their nostrils, even as your own lips chap with thirst. There's no fanfare here, just the steady rhythm of sandaled feet and the soft clinking of bronze and clay. The trade road beneath you is known to some as the Royal Road, but that name doesn't make the rocks any softer beneath your soles. This track stretches thousands of miles, and every step feels like it. You've walked since sunrise, watched the horizon shimmer with false lakes, mirages that tease your thoughts with cruel hope. Your throat is dry, but not dangerously so, yet. Your pack is lighter than it was at dawn, but your shoulders scream with every jostle of the strap. You look around. No one's speaking. Talking wastes moisture. Everyone is saving their spit like treasure. The man beside you is missing 2 fingers, lost them to frostbite in the high passes last winter. He doesn't talk about it, just nods when he catches your eye and keeps chewing something bitter, maybe a leaf, maybe regret. The lead trader, you never caught his name, carries a curved staff painted red at the tip. When he lifts it, everyone halts. When he taps it to the ground twice, it's time to move again. You've come to rely on that rhythm more than your own heartbeat. In the distance, you hear a bell, faint, hollow and lonely. That sound means hope. Maybe a caravanserai ahead. Maybe a cluster of tents where tea might be brewing over camel dung fire. But it could just as easily be another caravan heading the other way, carrying dates and carpets and news from cities you'll never see. For now, it doesn't matter. The bell reminds you there are others out there. Strangers with blistered feet and heavy backs threading their lives through the same dust. And this is just the beginning of your journey. You don't realize you've been holding your breath until the bell rings again. Closer this time. A low clang like iron touching bone. Your shoulders drop slightly with the sound, as if the weight of the day has just been acknowledged by the sky itself. The camels grunt behind you, slow and steady, and the pack straps creak like ancient whispers. The man beside you mutters something in old Elamite, maybe a prayer, or maybe just a complaint too old for the language of today. He spits, dry and dusty, then moves forward again without waiting for a reply. The road narrows, the packed earth gives way to a stony trail scattered with pebbles that shift under your steps. You've learned to move carefully here. One misstep, and your ankle will fold in the wrong direction and you'll be left behind. No one carries the injured for long. That isn't cruelty, it's just math. One lame walker slows 10, and on this road, time is weighed more carefully than silver. You pass a marker stone, half sunk in the sand. The carvings on it are faded, but still legible in the evening light. A royal decree etched in 3 tongues. Cuneiform Aramaic and Old Persian. It promises protection to travellers, the king's word that all who walk the royal road are under his wing. You look at it and can't help but smile faintly, a nice sentiment. But the king isn't walking beside you, is he? His wing feels very far away from your blisters and thirst. The bell comes into view just before sunset. It hangs from a crooked wooden beam above the entry gate of a caravanserai. Mud brick walls rise from the road like a tired guardian, pocked with holes and chipped by wind and time. But to your aching feet and the others' silent nods, it looks like a palace. You pass under the beam, ducking slightly as if entering a temple. Inside, a large central courtyard opens up, and for the first time in hours, maybe longer, the scent of water tickles your nose. There's a basin in the center. Shallow, lined with polished stones and filled with water that actually reflects the sky. You can barely believe it's real. The others fan out slowly. No one rushes. Rushing invites accidents. You drop your pack near a low wall and roll your shoulders. The pain crackles down your spine like dry leaves underfoot. You reach for your water skin, lift it, and then pause. Instead, you walk to the basin and crouch beside it. The stone is cool. You splash the water against your face first, not drinking yet. The cold shocks you, pulls a groan from deep in your throat. Your skin feels like it remembers what comfort is. Only then do you sip, small and slow, like tasting the memory of water instead of the thing itself. You catch your reflection, warped by ripples. Dust-caked face, tired eyes, and lips that are almost purple at the edges from heat. Still you're alive. That counts. Later, as dusk wraps the sky in purple and ash, the courtyard fills with soft sounds. Traders lay out mats. Some begin cooking. A boy no older than 10 starts tuning a 3-stringed sitar, its hollow notes rising and falling like birds testing the wind. You find a quiet corner near the inner wall, tuck your pack beneath your head, and lie down. Above you, the first stars blink awake, uncertain at first, then bolder. The moon hasn't risen yet. The sky feels enormous. You try not to think about tomorrow's path, whether it will rise into mountains or fall into desert, whether the water will last, whether the coin you've hidden in your sandal will be enough to buy salt-dried meat or just stale barley flatbread. You close your eyes. The stone beneath you is hard, but it doesn't matter, for tonight there is stillness. For tonight the bell's echo has faded into the sound of slow breathing, distant camel groans, and the quiet hum of life held together by thread and dust. And this is a kind of peace. The fire is nothing more than a circle of glowing coals and a few thin sticks that hiss when the wind breathes on them. It's not the kind of blaze that brings warmth to your bones, but it does enough. It holds back the night's chill and keeps the biting insects guessing. Around it, figures move slowly, quietly, like moths who've forgotten how to fly. Someone adds a handful of dry dung to the embers, and the smoke curls with a smell both earthy and sharp. You pull your wool shawl tighter around your shoulders and edge in a little closer, careful not to step on the flatbread laid out to toast on the rocks. Across the fire, the boy with the sitar has fallen asleep. His instrument lies beside him, strings loose and catching a silver glint from the stars above. A trader with a bent nose and a voice like gravel hums softly as he sharpens a small knife on a stone, the rhythm as steady as a lullaby. No one speaks of where they've come from. Fewer still mention where they're headed. It's not rudeness. It's just that on roads like these, names and plans are like footprints in the sand, here one moment, then gone with a single gust. Trust, if it ever shows up, arrives late and cautious. The man with the missing fingers settles near you, offering a hunk of something dense and brown wrapped in cloth. You take it without asking what it is. It smells sweet and strange, like fermented dates and old honey. The texture is chewy and sticks in your teeth. He nods once, satisfied you didn't spit it out, then mutters something about Sarmashad being 4 days ahead, if the weather holds. You nod back, though you've never been there and know nothing about the weather. The road doesn't bend to your guesses anyway. It has its own moods. As the fire begins to dip low, the air changes. It always does just past midnight. The wind that was still now moves, not hard, just enough to shift the dust. You feel it across your neck like a cool finger. Somewhere beyond the walls of the caravanserai, a jackal calls out. The sound isn't close, but the quiet makes it feel like it might be behind the wall watching. A few heads turn, but no one stirs. Predators are a risk, but not the biggest one. Most of the time, it's the road itself that takes people. Heatstroke, infection, a broken bone that goes bad, a wrong step near a cliff. Sometimes just silence. A man goes to relieve himself and doesn't come back. Maybe he wandered. Maybe something waited in the dark. Either way, there are no searches. The desert is not a place that gives things back. You lie back again, using your pack as a pillow. The cloth is rough, smells faintly of dried figs and sweat, but it cradles your head better than stone. You stare up at the sky, now fully awake, even though your body begs for sleep. Stars hang thick as spilled barley. You try to count them, but the motion makes your eyes sting. Somewhere beyond those stars is Persepolis, they say, the heart of the empire. You've never been there, but you've heard of its walls and columns, its gardens fed by underground canals, its fire temples that flicker eternally under priestly watch. You wonder what it smells like. Whether the people there sleep any better than you do. You shift, curling your legs, letting the edge of the wool wrap over your toes. A sudden thought sneaks into your mind. You haven't seen a woman in weeks, not since the last village before the salt stretch. You wonder how many days it's been since you laughed, really laughed. You can't remember the joke, you only remember the dust. The road takes a little more from everyone, not all at once, but in shavings. A bit of your voice, a bit of your softness, a bit of your faith in what waits at the next stop. And yet here you are, still walking, still hoping the next bell you hear means water, not warning. A breeze stirs again, the embers shiver. The man beside you finally speaks, his voice a quiet scrape. He tells you that the royal road wasn't built for men like him, or you, or anyone lying here tonight. It was built for kings and messengers, for taxes and commands, but now it belongs to those who endure it. Then he turns over, pulling his blanket close. A moment later, his breathing slows. You close your eyes again. The fire crackles low and the stars blink on, unbothered. You are not warm, you are not safe, but you are here. And that, for now, is enough. The sky begins to change long before the light touches your skin. It starts as a thinning of the dark, a gentle draining of black from the edges of the stars until they fade into a cool grey dome. You feel the shift before your eyes open. Your body recognizes the call of the new day before your mind can resist it. Bones stiff, mouth dry, and eyes gritty with sleep that never quite took hold, you rise slowly. Around you, others are doing the same, in silence mostly, each wrapped in their own cocoon of aches and half-forgotten dreams. There's no ceremony to the waking, just the slow push from stillness into movement. You stretch your arms, hear the joints click like old rope pulled too tight, and breathe in the morning air. It's sharp and dusty, tinged with ash from last night's fire and something else, something faintly metallic, maybe a rusted pot nearby, maybe blood. You don't look for the source. The caravan begins to stir like a creature made of many legs. Camels are roused with low whistles and tugs on their worn reins. Packs are lifted with soft grunts. Someone mutters about saddle sores. Another curses the cold. A woman in the far corner of the courtyard ties a strip of cloth around her wrist, then gathers herbs from a pouch into a cracked clay pot. You catch the scent of them when the breeze shifts. Bitter root and mint, maybe. Whatever she's brewing, it's not for taste, it's for pain. You eat a corner of last night's bread. It's dry and hard, but it fills the space in your stomach enough to keep the ache from blooming. Water is rationed again. A few sips, then the skin is tucked away. There will be none to spare until the next well, and even that depends on the season, the weather, the whim of the road. You tie your sandals, check your satchel, feel for the coin still pressed into the lining. It's still there, thank the gods. Then you rise, sling your load over your back, and follow the others through the narrow gate. No one says goodbye to the caravanserai. It's not a place of welcome, just a pause. Outside, the world is silent in the early morning hush. Even the camels seem subdued. Their feet make soft, sucking sounds in the dew-damp earth. The road stretches ahead, less of a path now, and more a suggestion drawn faintly across the plain. You squint toward the east. There's a shimmer there, not heat yet, but the promise of it. It waits, crouched behind the horizon like something wild and patient. The morning walk begins slowly. No one hurries. It's too early for urgency. Instead, the rhythm is steady, measured like breath itself. One foot, then the other, over and over until the noise of the world starts to return. Birds call from low thorn trees. Somewhere to the right, a dog barks. You wonder if it's wild or half-tame, chasing scraps from passing travelers. You hear the creak of carts, the rustle of grain sacks shifting, and the occasional clang of metal when a loose hook bounces against a wheel. A trader ahead of you hums under his breath. The melody is wordless, old, and full of yearning. It seeps into your bones like warmth from the first sliver of sun that breaks over the horizon. That light touches everything in gold. The edge of a clay jug, the tips of the camel's ears, the folds in the robe of the man ahead of you. You let it wash over you. Let it remind you that the world can still be beautiful, even when it's unforgiving. As the hours stretch on, the sun climbs higher, and the cool air begins to bake away. You loosen the cloth around your neck, wipe your face with a frayed sleeve, and keep going. The road bends slightly, revealing a ridge ahead. It doesn't look high, but you know from experience how deceptive these hills can be. What seems like a short climb can turn into hours of sharp rock, sliding sand, and breath that scrapes your lungs. But you don't hesitate. You follow the feet in front of you, listen to the labored breathing of the camel beside you, and focus on the sound of your own heartbeat. That sound means you're still moving, still alive. You crest the ridge as the sun reaches its peak. The view opens before you, vast and empty. Desert plain, broken only by the thin line of road that snakes toward a darker patch in the distance. Maybe a village, maybe trees, maybe just a trick of the heat. You don't know yet, but the caravan does not stop. It never stops unless it has to. So you press onward, dust rising behind you like a fading memory. By midday, the light is no longer gold. It's white, searing and unkind, falling across your shoulders like a burden you didn't ask to carry. The ridge behind you now seems impossibly distant, swallowed by the shimmer of heat and the haze rising from the baked earth. Each step forward feels heavier than the last, as if the road is testing your will with every inch. The rhythm that carried you through the morning begins to falter. Even the camels, usually so steady, have slowed to a reluctant shuffle. Their sides rise and fall like bellows pushed by a tired hand. Their breath smells sour and hot. The leather strap of your satchel digs into your shoulder. You shift it, but there's no real relief. Your back is damp. Sweat gathers beneath the folds of your tunic, clings to the small of your back and the hollows of your knees. Your feet ache in a familiar, pulsing way. The soles are cracked and tender from days of walking, and every grain of sand that slips beneath your sandals feels like a needle. You try to breathe slowly through your nose, in and out, but the air offers no comfort. It enters hot and dry, stealing moisture from your mouth with every breath. Speaking would be pointless now. Even the seasoned traders are quiet, conserving what little saliva they have left. Words can wait for shade, if shade ever comes. You glance up now and then, looking for anything, a shadow, a tree, a bird, even a ruin that might promise shelter. But the land stretches out unbroken. No oasis, no spring, just the road, thin and cracked, veering slightly to the left, as if uncertain of where it should go next. You don't remember when you stopped hoping to see something familiar. At some point, the idea of a landmark became laughable. Now, it's just you, the heat, and the unkind stretch of silence that lives in the space between one footstep and the next. Your thoughts wander, not from comfort, but from desperation. They drift to the things you've left behind, even if you try not to let them. A sister's voice, a market square, the sound of river frogs after sunset. You picture a clay cup filled with fresh pomegranate juice, the way it ran sticky down your chin as a child. You think of your mother's hands, thin and calloused, but always warm when she pressed them against your forehead during fevers. Those memories flicker like shadows behind your eyelids, offering the illusion of coolness for a breath or two. But they never last. A cough breaks the rhythm. Someone ahead stumbles. The caravan halts. You squint forward. It's the boy with the sitar, barely able to keep upright, his face pale beneath the dust. A woman, perhaps his mother or maybe just someone kind enough to care, supports him under the arm. His head lolls for a moment before he straightens, blinking like he's just woken from a long sleep. No one speaks. The lead trader walks back, looks at the boy, then at the woman, then says nothing. He just motions forward. They continue. Everyone does. The caravan does not wait. Kindness, when it shows up on the road, has to walk at the same pace as everything else. You press on. Your feet feel like they belong to someone else, heavy, distant, numb in places and painfully alive in others. You count your steps in your mind, but you lose track after 100, then again after a dozen. Time slips strangely when you're this hot, this thirsty. Minutes feel like hours. Hours feel like weeks. The sun climbs, then begins its long slide toward the west, and still no shelter appears. Finally, just as your knees begin to tremble in earnest and your tongue sticks unpleasantly to the roof of your mouth, the road dips gently. You don't notice it at first, but the change in angle becomes a relief. The land opens ahead. A thin cluster of dark green against a sand-colored hill flickers into view. Trees. Date palms, most likely. You blink several times to be sure it's not a mirage. Others have seen it too. You can feel it in the shift of movement around you, a faint rustle of hope. The sun hasn't softened and your body is still weak, but now there is direction again. Now there is a goal. The trader lifts his red-tipped staff again, once, then again. The signal you've come to obey without question. Forward. The road continues, but for a moment it feels less cruel. The ground changes before the trees come close. First, it darkens, softens slightly underfoot. Then the crunch of scattered stone gives way to something more like packed clay. The scent shifts too. It's faint but present, a dampness in the air carried on the same breeze that moments ago offered nothing but dust. Your ears, dulled by the hush of the open road, begin to pick up new sounds. The hum of insects, the occasional creak of tree limbs, and far off, the low, murmuring gurgle of water moving slowly over stone. It almost doesn't seem real. You resist the urge to quicken your steps. After so many hours under the sun's ruthless eye, your legs threaten to buckle if asked for more than a shuffle. The first palm you pass towers above you like a sentinel. Its trunk is sun-bleached and scarred, wrapped in rope-like bark, and its fronds whisper high above, a kind of secret language only trees understand. The shade it offers is narrow but glorious. Cool air clings to the earth beneath it, as if the heat simply forgot to settle there. Others ahead of you have already begun peeling off their packs, leaning against the thick bases of the trees, or simply collapsing into the sand and sighing with such relief it almost sounds like prayer. You find your own place, not far from a low-lying bush with red berries you don't recognize. You don't sit right away. Instead, you let your arms hang by your sides, your body swaying slightly like a worn-out reed. It takes a moment before you trust your legs to bend without betrayal. When you finally kneel, it's with a slow hiss through your teeth. You stretch your legs out in front of you, back against the tree, and let your head tilt back against the rough bark. Your scalp, still hot from hours beneath your scarf, pulses with each heartbeat. But you're in the shade now. That's all that matters. Nearby, someone has found the spring. You hear the splash of a clay bowl hitting stone, followed by the delighted chuckle of a child. Water is being passed now, not in full skins, but in small bowls or cupped hands. No one drinks deeply at first. There is a kind of reverence, or maybe superstition, that holds the thirst at bay, just long enough for people to believe it's real. You finally rise again, legs trembling, and make your way toward the sound. The spring is no more than a shallow pool, surrounded by stone arranged like the ribs of a great animal. The water seeps up from beneath slowly and steadily, cool and clear. You crouch low, dip your hands in, and hold them there until the skin burns with cold. Then you drink. Slowly, carefully. You do not gulp. You let the water coat your tongue, slide down your throat like silk, and fill your belly with a calm that is almost painful. The boy with the sitar sits nearby, cradling his instrument as if it were a wounded animal. His mother or guardian, still no one is sure which, sits beside him, combing his hair with her fingers. She doesn't speak, just hums something soft and familiar sounding, a tune that winds its way through the trees and makes the air feel heavier with memory. A few traders begin pulling out food, nothing fancy: dried figs, strips of salted goat, hard cheese that flakes when cut. You eat without thinking, barely tasting the meal, but grateful nonetheless. Every bite steadies you, anchors you a little more firmly in the world. Eventually, some begin tending to the animals. Camels are watered, packs are loosened. One of the older beasts groans in a way that sounds almost human. A thin man with a long scar across his collarbone tends to a wound on the leg of his mule. He does it with the patience of someone who's done it before, using clean water and a smear of something green and foul-smelling from a pouch around his waist. You watch him work, not with curiosity, but with a quiet kind of gratitude. People who know how to mend things are valuable out here. As the sun lowers, the oasis grows quieter. The earlier sounds of relief shift into the slow hush of rest. You lie back again, arms folded under your head, and watch the sky begin to change color. Soft blues now, hints of rose at the edges, as if the world itself is exhaling. You're not sure how long you'll stay here. Maybe just a night, maybe longer if the animals need rest. But for now, under the trees and beside the spring, the road feels far away. Not gone, never gone, just softened for a while. And in this rare pocket of stillness, you allow yourself to believe in the next day. Evening slips into the grove like a careful guest, neither loud nor hurried. The heat, once oppressive and sharp, has thinned into a soft warmth that clings gently to the stones and tree trunks. The palm shadows grow longer, stretching across the sand like fingers of old gods, reaching out to touch each sleeper and each pack laid down in silence. You're still lying on your back, your tunic now dry with the breeze that follows the setting sun. Your hands rest folded on your chest, and for the first time in days, your muscles are not screaming. They ache, yes, but in a distant, almost agreeable way, like the echo of a song long past. The light begins to shift around you. Not the full dark of night yet, but that golden hour where everything glows with a kind of faded reverence. It softens the hard lines of faces around the fire and makes even the cracked clay walls of the watering trough seem holy. The boy with the sitar begins to play again. Not a full tune, just little phrases plucked gently from the strings like memories being pulled from the corners of a dream. His fingers move slowly, uncertain at first, then steadier, as if his strength is slowly returning alongside the notes. You sit up, legs crossed, and watch the others begin to gather for the night's simple rituals. Someone lights a small fire, careful not to let the flames rise too high. Wood is precious out here, and too much smoke can invite attention. The older traders bring out rolled mats and thin blankets, laying them in careful rows near the trees. A young girl stirs a pot over the coals, something thick and bubbling, lentils maybe, or barley, seasoned with whatever they've carried from the last village. You smell onion, faint and sweet, and your stomach reminds you that water alone cannot fill what's hollowed out by walking all day. The meal is shared without ceremony, bowls passed, torn bread offered with quiet nods. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth that spreads through your chest with each bite. It's not luxurious, but it's comforting. The kind of food that reminds you of being cared for, even if no one speaks your name. Across the fire, someone tells a story, voice low and rough like gravel being turned in a river. It's a tale about a fox who tricked a king, but you've heard versions of it in a dozen villages, each with a different ending. You smile, not because the story is new, but because it's familiar, like an old cloak, threadbare but soft. The stars begin to reveal themselves one by one, shy at first, then bold. You lean back again, cradling your head in your hands as you watch them emerge. The moon is not yet up, which makes their arrival feel more dramatic, more private. You try to trace constellations, but your eyes are tired, and the stars shift when you stare too long. The sound of the fire crackling mingles with the occasional rustle of animals settling nearby. Someone sharpens a blade with long, slow strokes. Another unrolls a parchment and reads by the flicker of lamplight, lips moving silently. For a while, you simply breathe, in, outside. The rhythm calms you. Your heart, which beat too fast under the noonday sun, now rests in sync with the night sounds. You notice the texture of the ground beneath you, grains of sand caught in your blanket, the way the wind lifts the edge of your sleeve just slightly, enough to cool the sweat that still clings to your ribs. You think again of home, but not with pain this time, more like curiosity. How many sunsets have passed since you left? Would anyone still recognize you now with your leaner frame and the hardened look around your eyes? A shooting star arcs quietly overhead. No one notices but you. You don't make a wish. There's nothing left to wish for out here that isn't earned step by step. Wishes don't survive the royal road, only willpower and stubbornness. You pull your blanket tighter, tucking it beneath your chin, and close your eyes as the wind sighs through the palms. Sleep won't come quickly, it never does anymore, but at least you're not moving. At least for tonight, the road waits. You do not remember falling asleep, but you remember waking. It comes not with a sound, but with a shift. The kind of silent stir that travels through a camp before the sun arrives, when the world is holding its breath in anticipation of light. A soft creak of leather. The muted thud of someone setting down a bundle. You open your eyes and see only shadow at first. The sky above is still dark, but softening, like the last moment before paper begins to catch fire. You feel the weight of your blanket around your shoulders, and beneath you, the sand is cooler now, packed and slightly damp from night air. Your body aches in familiar ways. Not sharp pain, but the deep soreness that settles in when movement becomes your lifestyle rather than your task. Others are stirring too. You can hear low murmurs, the occasional sniff, and someone coughing behind the tree line. There is no alarm, no voice calling out to mark the hour. But everyone moves as if summoned by the same invisible thread. The boy with the sitar lies curled on his side, his instrument wrapped in cloth beside him. His mother, or at least the woman who watches over him, sits upright already, her eyes focused on the horizon where the light is slowly blooming in soft pinks and pale oranges. She does not speak, only adjusts the folds of her robe around her knees and waits. You push yourself up, elbows trembling a little from the effort. Your joints resist, but not stubbornly. They simply need a moment to remember their purpose. You stand slowly, brushing grit from your clothes, and begin the morning's quiet rituals. Roll the blanket, fold it tight, tuck it into the bundle with your tunic and flask. Check the satchel. The coin is still there, tucked in the bottom corner, like a secret only your fingers know. You take a long sip of water, then a second one, shorter, as if your body has grown greedy in its sleep. No one eats much this early. The fires are out, a few nuts, a piece of stale bread chewed without comment. Food in the morning is more duty than delight. You stretch once more, twisting at the waist, feeling the pull of old bruises and fresh tension. The air is still cool. It's the best it will feel all day. You try to memorize it, to carry that coolness in your mind for when the sun rises high and makes the world shimmer and bend. As the first full sliver of sun clears the horizon, the caravan begins to move again. Slowly at first. Animals are roused, packs are lifted. The trader's red-tipped staff is already in hand. He walks to the front, without a word, and waits. The others fall into place behind him as they always do. There's no call to order, just the shared understanding that staying means wasting daylight. And wasting daylight means risking heat, thirst, or worse. The road does not care if your muscles still ache or if your feet are blistered. It cares only that you keep moving. You begin to walk again. The sound of your own sandals brushing against sand returns. Your shadow is long in front of you now, stretched thin by the rising sun. The trees disappear behind you quicker than they came. Soon they're no more than a dark blur against the horizon, swallowed once again by the dust and light. The memory of the oasis already begins to fade, not forgotten, but folded gently into the stack of places that once offered rest. You wonder how many more lie ahead, how many more nights will be passed on the ground, how many sunrises will find you walking, chasing a destination that always feels like it's just one more ridge away. There's a kind of rhythm to it now, the walk, the silence, the way people fall into line and conserve their breath. You begin to hear your heartbeat again, not with panic, but with presence. A soft thump in your ears, matched only by the steady sound of hooves and the creak of worn leather. It is strange how the road can hurt you and soothe you in the same breath. You've stopped wondering why. You've simply accepted that it does. You adjust the strap on your shoulder, settle it better across your collarbone, and narrow your eyes against the brightening sky. There is no clear destination visible yet, just the suggestion of a slope far ahead. And so, as the light grows stronger and the first beads of sweat begin to gather at your brow, you do the only thing you've learned to do out here. You keep walking. The road ahead doesn't look different, but somehow it feels harder. The sun is only just above the horizon, and already it carries the weight of noon. It presses against your skin like a hand, not heavy, but insistent. The breeze you'd hoped for never comes. The only air that moves now is the kind stirred by the slow, deliberate plodding of hooves and feet, and even that feels stale, as if it has already passed through 100 mouths before reaching yours. The pack on your shoulders has become a permanent fixture. You no longer notice its weight as a separate thing. It is simply part of you now, like your name or the smell of sweat that never quite fades from your skin. Hours pass without change. The world narrows to a single lane of focus. The movement of your own feet, the sway of the camel beside you, the occasional crunch of a stone underfoot. It's strange how quiet the desert can be, even when surrounded by people. No birds now, no music, no chatter. Even the boy's sitar is wrapped and silent. The others walk like ghosts, heads down, eyes on the path, each person locked within their own rhythm, their own thoughts. The silence feels thick, as if the road has swallowed everyone's voice whole. Your mind begins to wander again, not because you want it to, but because there's nothing left to hold it back. With nothing new to see, you begin to see what's already inside you. Fragments of old conversations drift into your head. A girl's laugh from 3 summers ago, the clink of cups in a courtyard cafe where you once sat too long in the shade. You remember how the bricks there held heat long after the sun had moved on, and how your fingers trailed across the wall absently, just feeling the warmth like it was proof you were alive. You think of your brother, who stayed behind when you left. He hated the idea of travel, said the world outside the village had too many teeth and not enough mercy. You wonder if he was right. You blink and refocus. The road has begun to rise slightly, so gently that your legs noticed before your eyes did. It's the kind of incline that wears you down slowly, not steep enough to break you outright, but enough to add a few extra beats to your pulse. You adjust your scarf, tucking it tighter over your neck, shielding against the sun that now lingers on your left shoulder. It's already reddening, the skin there tender, despite the layer of cloth. You glance down and realize you've been clenching your jaw for what must be hours. You stretch it open with a soft click, then let it settle again, only slightly looser this time. There's a shift in the caravan, a slowing, not a stop, but a drag in the pace, like a ripple of weariness passed through the group all at once. You feel it too. It's not that your legs hurt more, it's that the part of you that pushes them forward has started to ask why. Why keep walking if the scenery never changes? Why keep hoping for shelter when it never comes? But you shake those thoughts off, or at least try to. You've learned by now that hope on the road isn't a blazing fire. It's a single coal you keep hidden in your chest, protected from the wind and the world. You don't fan it, You don't stare at it, you just make sure it doesn't go out. Ahead, the lead trader raises his staff, a signal. You pause, grateful for the break. You press your hands to your thighs, lean forward, and stretch your spine until it pops faintly. Others are doing the same. A few sit outright, dropping onto flat stones or crouching near a low ridge where the path widens. You crouch too, palms braced on your knees, and let the blood return to your fingers. You feel every heartbeat now pulsing behind your eyes, throbbing in your neck. You look up and squint. There's something on the horizon, maybe a tower, maybe just a rock formation, but it gives you a focal point, something to measure the distance against, even if that distance remains unchanged. The staff taps twice. The break is over. You rise again, slower than before, but you rise. You lift your pack, adjust the strap, swallow the bitterness at the back of your throat, and then you walk. You've been staring at the same point on the horizon for what feels like hours. It hasn't moved, hasn't changed in shape or color. A crooked line, like a broken tooth, jutting from the earth, barely distinguishable from the heat ripples that rise from the road. Every time you lift your eyes, you expect it to be closer, but it just sits there, stubborn, as though it's testing your belief in forward motion. You don't bother asking the others what it is. No one has spoken for miles. The silence between travelers grows deeper with the day's heat. It's not unfriendly, just practical. Words dry the mouth, questions are burdens. There are things better left to the imagination anyway. Your feet have begun to move with a life of their own. You don't guide them anymore. They follow the shape of the road, the same way water follows a channel. Left, right, repeat. Sandal slapping stone, heel biting dust. The pain in your soles no longer flashes bright and sharp. It's gone soft now, dulled by repetition, and the strange numbness that comes after long fatigue. You feel the strain in your calves, the slight pull in your lower back, a tightness at your shoulder where the strap rubs raw skin. These things don't surprise you. You carry them like you carry your pack, quietly and without complaint. The heat climbs, crawling up your neck, seeping under your clothes. Sweat comes and goes, leaving behind a crust of salt that stings your eyes and lips. You can taste it when you lick your teeth. The water ration for the afternoon is small, just enough to wet your throat, not enough to ease the thirst. You sip it slowly, rolling it across your tongue before swallowing. The act is almost ceremonial now, the only luxury you have left. Behind you, the boy coughs. It's dry and persistent, echoing faintly across the rocks. His guardian gives him a cloth to press against his mouth. He walks on with his eyes half-lidded, but his feet still move. You wonder how long he'll be able to keep going like that. Part of you wants to offer something, a portion of your water, a word of comfort. But you know better. Out here, mercy is as heavy as guilt. Every drop spared is a risk. Every kindness could be the difference between standing tomorrow or not. You glance again at the crooked landmark ahead, still not closer, still looming in the same place it's been since morning. The sun has begun to tilt slightly in the sky, casting longer shadows, softening the color of the earth. The air doesn't cool, but it changes in texture, a subtle shift that suggests the day has passed its peak. That means you've made it through the worst of it. That means survival for today at least. When you crest a low rise, the land flattens again, and finally the structure becomes more defined. It's a tower, or what's left of one. The top is broken, jagged like a snapped reed, and the walls beneath are pockmarked and faded. A watchtower, perhaps, or a signal post from a time when the royal road still carried kings and royal messengers, not just the poor and the persistent. The caravan slows as it nears the ruins. The lead trader circles it once, tapping the ground with the end of his staff, as if checking for traps or snakes. Then he gestures toward the shaded side, where the stones cast a narrow ribbon of shadow along the earth. One by one, the travelers slip toward it, like tired birds finding a ledge at last. You drop your pack without grace. It thuds against the ground and kicks up a puff of dust. You fall beside it, elbows landing harder than you meant, but you don't care. The shade feels almost sacred, a reprieve from the sun's endless attention. You stretch out your legs and rest your head on the bundle, closing your eyes against the brightness. Around you, others settle too. Someone uncaps a jar of dates. The scent drifts across the ruin, sweet and almost dizzying. You don't ask for one. You don't want to break the stillness. Even chewing feels like too much effort right now. The tower looms above, cracked and quiet. You wonder what messages it once held, who once stood atop it, squinting into the horizon for signals or riders. You wonder if they too counted the steps, watched the road stretch impossibly far, and questioned whether it ever truly led somewhere worth reaching. The shadow from the ruined tower stretches a little longer now, cool fingers brushing across the sand, like they're trying to comfort what the sun left behind. You lie with your back pressed against a fallen slab of stone, its surface pitted and ancient, warm to the touch but no longer burning. There's a small crack running through its middle, like a seam in the earth. You trace it with your fingertip, feeling the way it splits and veers off unpredictably, just like the paths of those who pass through this land. It reminds you of veins beneath skin, or the fragile line between holding on and letting go. You don't speak. No one does. The only sound is the occasional rattle of gear being adjusted, the quiet rustle of cloth, a muffled cough from someone half asleep in the dirt. You hear the low creak of a camel chewing, slow and rhythmic, like the ticking of a lazy clock. The rhythm soothes you in a way you hadn't expected. You close your eyes for a moment and let the weight of stillness settle on you, heavier than the pack that's pressed into your hip. You think about the tower behind you, the way it must have stood tall once, proud and purposeful. Now it's broken and hollow, but it still stands, a marker for the weary. A place to pause, to lean against, to shelter from the fire in the sky. You wonder if that's how the road will leave you, eventually worn and chipped, but still upright in some way. Not a ruin, not exactly, but something left behind that once moved. You shift slightly, wincing as a sharp pebble finds your rib. You move it without opening your eyes. You listen to the silence again. It's never complete, not really. There's always the wind whispering over sand or the distant thump of a footfall, the wheeze of breath being caught and held. But it's close enough. Close enough to quiet the parts of your mind that usually buzz like insects. For a few precious moments, you don't think of tomorrow's walk, or the blister forming on your heel, or the coin you still have tucked into your sandal like a talisman. You just breathe. A man nearby breaks the silence with a soft grunt as he shifts his position. His voice follows, dry and cracked from too much dust and too little water. He tells no one in particular that he once passed this same tower 15 years ago, heading in the other direction. He says it like it's both a fact and a question, as if he's trying to confirm that the road really runs in both directions. No one replies, but he speaks again, slower this time, saying how the stones looked taller back then, how the cracks were smaller, how his knees didn't hurt and his beard wasn't as grey. He chuckles softly at that last part. Not bitter, just tired. You open your eyes again. The sun has shifted further now. The tower casts its shadow wider, stretching toward the east. The boy and his guardian sit close to the base of the structure. She wipes his brow with a damp cloth, her movements careful and slow. He's awake, but quiet, cradling the sitar in his lap. He doesn't play it. He just holds it like something precious, like a promise he's trying not to break. You hear the familiar tap of the staff, once, then again. The signal is gentle this time, not a command, more a reminder. The sun is moving, the road is waiting, the pause is over. You rise slowly, brushing dust from your arms and shaking the stiffness from your knees. Your legs protest at first, reluctant to surrender the comfort they'd just found. But they move, they always move. As the caravan gathers again, stepping back into formation, you glance once more at the tower. Its top leans slightly as if bowing to the weight of its years. You nod back, almost without meaning to. A silent gesture of respect for something that has stood here long enough to watch everything else pass by. You hoist your pack, shift it into place and step back onto the road. The sun has softened just enough to be bearable again, though it still lingers against your skin like a threat. Ahead, the line of travelers stretches out, bending toward the horizon like a paragraph not yet finished, and so you walk. The sun has dipped just enough now that the shadows of the walkers stretch long and thin across the road, like tethered memories reaching out to brush the edges of the stones. The heat remains, but it no longer sears. It lingers instead, a low smolder resting in the folds of your clothes and the bend of your back. The air carries the scent of dry grass, faint and brittle, stirred only when the breeze deigns to pass through. You've settled again into your rhythm, that quiet, unspoken agreement between your legs and the road. It's no longer something you fight. It simply is, like gravity or nightfall, or the way sand settles into every fold of cloth, no matter how tightly you wrap it. You walk with your eyes half-lidded now, the world narrowing to the feel of the ground beneath your soles and the sound of sandals and hooves marking time in unison. Every now and then, you catch a glimpse of the boy's guardian ahead of you, her scarf trailing behind her like a thin ribbon of smoke. The boy keeps close, his steps uneven but determined. You marvel not at his endurance, but at the way he seems to walk with a kind of delicate hope, as if he's following something only he can see just beyond the horizon. The tower is far behind you now. It has become a memory, softened by distance, the kind that will blur into a dozen other memories of ruins and half-fallen places along the way. But still, some part of it lingers. Maybe in the weight of the silence it held, or in the way its shadow cooled your skin just enough to keep you moving. You think about how many others passed beneath it, long before you, traders with silver and silk, couriers with secrets wrapped in wax, soldiers, runaways, dreamers, ghosts. The royal road carries them all, doesn't it? Their footsteps layered like sediment beneath your own. A trader beside you murmurs something in a language you don't fully understand, but the tone is unmistakable. A prayer, maybe, or a remembrance. His eyes are fixed on the horizon, but they do not focus. He is somewhere else, in a memory that has reached across time and taken his hand. You don't interrupt. The road allows for such things. It becomes a space between lives where silence is a conversation and each step is a sentence waiting to be finished. The sky begins to shift again, bleeding slowly from gold to amber and then to the bruised purple that always announces dusk. You feel it in your bones first, the change. Your limbs grow heavier, not from fatigue exactly, but from the suggestion of rest. Your body senses that the day's end draws near, and so it begins to surrender. You adjust the cloth around your head, tugging it tighter at the sides where the breeze threatens to undo it. The wind now carries a new sound, low and distant, the groan of wood, the creak of rope, the quiet muttering of animals gathering. You peer ahead. There's another stop coming, not a village, not quite. Perhaps a staging ground, a clearing marked by stones and packed earth where caravans meet before dusk to rest without asking questions. You recognize the signs, a line of dark shapes tethered to posts, fires not yet lit but ready, people moving with that cautious urgency that comes when the sun kisses the edge of the horizon and darkness looms just close enough to quicken the pace. As the caravan approaches, you feel a tightening in your stomach. Hunger has returned, slow and creeping like a forgotten song. The last meal is far behind you now, digested into dust and memory. You wonder what the others will cook tonight, if the lentils will have spice, if the figs will be ripe, if the fire will be warm enough to forget how cold the nights can be once the heat escapes into the stars. When you step off the road into the gathering place, the dust swirls around your ankles. You stamp your feet once, more out of habit than necessity, and drop your pack beside a thin patch of grass where the wind has left a shallow hollow. You stretch your back, one vertebra at a time, and breathe in deeply. The scent of wood smoke is faint but rising. It won't be long now. You crouch, resting on your haunches, and look back the way you came. The road behind you has already begun to fade. The tower is gone, folded into the dusk, but your steps remain, invisible perhaps, but real. Each one a quiet declaration. I was here. I kept going. Night has a different kind of weight in this part of the world. It doesn't fall like a curtain. It seeps in slowly, seeping between stones and threading through the cracks in your blanket, wrapping itself around ankles and wrists until you notice the chill for the first time. The fire near you sputters, caught between the rhythm of the wood and the breath of the wind. You sit close to it, not too near to burn, but just close enough to let the heat creep up your shins and into your bones. The stars are out again, and they are sharp tonight, unblinking and scattered with a precision that feels deliberate, as if someone carved them into the sky by hand. Around you, the camp begins to take its shape. Packs repurposed as pillows, scarves folded twice and laid out as bedding, people settling into themselves. Not much is said. A few short words between companions, a chuckle from a bearded trader who sits with his back against a post, sharpening a blade that looks far too polished to have been used recently. The boy with the sitar, though still pale, has found the strength to play again. A slow, wandering tune. It floats through the camp like a breeze that has forgotten where it was supposed to go. You hold a small bowl of lentils in your lap. They're warm and spiced with something faintly citrusy, a welcome surprise after so many meals that tasted only of salt and necessity. You chew slowly, feeling the grains of sand still stuck in your teeth from earlier. Your jaw aches, not from hunger, but from the effort of doing anything at all after the day's walk. Still, the food sits well in your stomach. Your limbs start to feel heavy in the way that tells you sleep is no longer far off. But you're not ready yet. Not quite. There's something about the fire that holds you here. It flickers and pops now and then, spitting sparks into the air like tiny thoughts trying to escape. You find yourself watching them, tracing their upward flight until they vanish just below the lowest stars. The flames shift between orange and blue and back again, and in the soft shadows it throws, faces seem older, more lined, more honest. The road has a way of stripping people down to their truest selves, especially when the sun sets, and the masks they wear for survival lose their grip. Someone starts telling a story. You don't catch the beginning, only drift into it halfway through, but the voice is rich and slow, the kind that fills the spaces between breaths. It's a tale of a merchant who made a deal with a desert spirit promising water in exchange for a map to treasure, but the spirit gave him only a mirror, and the merchant wandered forever, seeing only his own reflection. It's not the story itself that matters, it's the telling, the way the words move, the lilt in the speaker's voice, the slow cadence that matches the rhythm of the fire's crackle. You listen with half a smile, not because you believe the tale, but because it feels familiar. Stories like these cling to places like this. They grow out of the dust and the long silences between caravan stops. You remember your own village, how your grandfather used to spin tales just like this one, with a glint in his eye and a secret he never fully shared. He once told you that stories are like water in the desert. Sometimes they quench your thirst, and sometimes they just remind you how thirsty you are. The bowl in your lap is empty now. You set it gently to the side and wrap your arms around your knees. The fire's heat lingers on your face, but your back has started to chill. You consider crawling under your blanket, letting sleep take you. But something about this moment feels worth holding on to a little longer. This exact point in the night where people are neither fully awake nor fully dreaming, where the world is quiet but not yet asleep. The stars blink slowly overhead. The boys' music fades, replaced by the soft breathing of those who have already surrendered to rest. You lie back finally, folding your blanket over your chest, and stare upward. The road feels far away now, tucked into the folds of the dark, but you know it's still there, waiting, always waiting. Sleep comes not with a rush, but with a slow drift, like sand slipping through your fingers. You don't resist. The night, for all its calm, doesn't pass without its tremors. At some point, though you can't say when, the warmth of the fire fades into a cold that wraps itself around your ankles and fingers like a quiet warning. Your blanket no longer feels thick enough. You curl inwards slightly, knees drawing closer to your chest, and shift your position on the packed earth. The ground beneath you is not sharp, not jagged, but it is unkind in its firmness. No give, no softness, just the unyielding reminder that this is not home. Sleep has come, but it doesn't stay. It ebbs and flows like a tide that can't quite decide whether it wants to take you with it. You drift in and out. One moment you're back in your village, standing beneath the tamarisk tree outside your mother's house, watching the wind rattle the branches. You hear someone call your name, not urgently, but with a familiarity that warms you. Then, just as quickly, you're somewhere else, in a city you've never seen, watching faceless crowds pass you by. Their feet never touch the ground, and yet the dust still rises behind them. You try to follow but can't move. Your legs are too heavy, like they've been replaced with stone. A sharp rustle nearby pulls you up into the waking world again. Your eyes snap open to the blur of shadows and starlight. You hold your breath, listening. It's nothing, just someone shifting in their sleep. A restless dreamer kicking their blanket, or perhaps one of the animals tugging at its tether. You exhale slowly and let your head fall back, but your mind has stirred too much now to settle. The stillness around you is so complete, it begins to press against your ears. You hear everything, the scrape of wind against worn cloth, the soft click of someone's teeth as they murmur in their sleep, a distant thump, maybe a hoof against the ground, and under it all, the whisper of the desert itself, breathing in the dark. You sit up, not fully, just enough to scan the edge of the camp. A few others are awake. A man on the far side of the fire is tending to a wound on his foot, muttering curses under his breath in a tongue you don't know. The boy with the sitar is asleep now, arms wrapped around the instrument as though it were a sibling. His guardian is still sitting upright beside him, not sleeping, just watching. She seems carved from stone in the way she doesn't move. Her eyes, hollow in the half-light, drift over the fire and the sky and the shifting forms of those sleeping. She doesn't seem tired, just distant, like her thoughts are leagues away, following some trail no feet have touched. You rub your eyes and lie back again, letting the blanket fall over you. The stars above are so clear it feels like you could pluck them from the sky. There's a comfort in their consistency. They do not move fast. They do not burn out before their time. They just keep glowing, indifferent and eternal. You pick out one and try to follow its path across the heavens, but your eyes grow heavy halfway through. The cold has crept into your collar, but you don't bother adjusting it. Some part of you has accepted that discomfort is part of the road's companionship. Your thoughts drift again, not to dreams, but to memory. You remember your father's hands, the way they looked when he returned from the market, rough and calloused, but always careful when they touched your shoulder. You remember how he used to say that roads don't teach you where to go. They just test whether you'll keep going. He never traveled far, but he spoke of distance like it was an old friend. You wonder what he would say now, seeing you out here, eating dust and following strangers beneath a sky that never blinks. The fire crackles once more before settling into embers. The night deepens. You close your eyes again and let yourself fall, this time more willingly, into that space where breath slows and thought softens. The desert is quiet now. Even the stars seem to dim slightly as if resting. Tomorrow, the road will call again, but for now it waits. There is no rooster, no bell, no chant to mark the hour. The world wakes slowly, as if uncertain whether it wants to greet the morning at all. The fire has long since collapsed into a bed of ash, glowing only faintly at the deepest center like the dying heart of some old beast. The cold has seeped into every surface now. It clings to your bones, your breath, the edges of your blanket, even the air inside your mouth. It is a different cold from the chill of wind or rain. It is the cold of stillness, of earth that has given nothing for miles and offers no reason to soften. Your eyes open without effort. There is no sharp alarm to jolt you, just the slow return of awareness, the feel of your own limbs wrapped tightly beneath your blanket, the ache in your back from sleeping against hard ground, the faint stiffness in your fingers clenched against the night air. Around you, others stir in the same muted way. Not with energy, but with resignation. There's an understanding in these shared movements. The road does not wait for you to feel ready. It waits for no one. You sit up slowly, shoulders hunched, arms crossing tightly over your chest in a futile attempt to retain some of the warmth that has already fled into the pre-dawn sky. The stars are still out, though fainter now, like they're backing away from the day's approach. The horizon shows only the barest whisper of color, a thin band of blue-gray light pushing gently against the edge of the world. You roll your neck, working out the stiffness, and take a deep breath. The air is clean, untouched, but sharp enough to make your lungs sting. You reach for your pack and begin the morning ritual. Unwrap, fold, tighten, secure. Each motion is slow but familiar. Your fingers remember the knots even before your eyes fully open. The blanket is folded with practiced hands, your gear inspected without thought. Everything you need for the day ahead is either on your back or in your head. Nothing more, nothing less. The simplicity of it on some level feels almost sacred. The boy and his guardian are already awake. She stands with her scarf drawn over her mouth, her eyes fixed once again on the horizon. The boy looks better this morning. His color has returned slightly, and though his steps are still careful, there is a steadiness to him that was missing yesterday. He doesn't play the sitar, but he holds it close as they begin to move about. No breakfast yet. Just a few sips of water, enough to wake the tongue and soften the breath. Food will come later, perhaps during the first rest stop. Hunger, like fatigue, is simply a companion now, not an emergency. The lead trader calls out, low and gravelly, but it's enough. The caravan begins to shift into motion again, the same way waves crawl back to sea after crashing against the shore. Slowly, steadily, you rise, not because you want to, but because it is time. You hoist your pack, settle it across your shoulder, and feel the now familiar thud against your back. It fits you like a second spine now, worn and molded to your shape. As the first full inch of sun crests the edge of the earth, the warmth begins to touch the tops of the stones and the curve of your shoulders. It is not enough to comfort, but enough to remind you that the world still moves, that this day too will unfold. You take the first step, almost without realizing it, your feet finding the groove in the path, the rhythm of the line ahead of you. The others follow, and the road once again becomes the quiet pulse of your life. There are no words spoken, there's nothing to say. The world around you is still too fragile, too suspended in that delicate space between night and day. The only sound is the soft press of sandals into sand, the low groan of tired beasts, and the creak of leather pulled, taut. You do not know how far today will take you. Only that you must go, and so you go. The morning wears on without much notice. There is no moment where you realize you've walked far, only the quiet accumulation of distance, marked not by milestones or signposts, but by the change in the way your legs begin to feel. The ground beneath you is harder today, packed earth with streaks of scattered stone, as though the land itself was flattened long ago by countless feet and has never had the courage to shift since. The sun rises slowly, reluctant at first, but then bolder as it pushes past the ridge. Its heat is not yet biting, but it carries a silent threat that by midday it will command everything it touches. You've stopped measuring time by hours. There are no clocks here, only heat and shadow, hunger and thirst, the tilt of the sun against your face. You watch the shifting shade of your own silhouette, stretched long behind you, then shortened beneath you, then finally slipping forward again. These small signals tell you more than any map could. The royal road might be ancient and grand in the stories people tell, but out here it is just a path, rough and worn, littered with memories no one speaks aloud. Every step you take is layered over another traveler's footprint, erased and replaced again and again like a palimpsest of motion. The boy, walking just a few paces ahead now, stumbles slightly, catches himself, and keeps moving without a word. His guardian doesn't turn her head, but you can see her hand flex slightly around the strap of her satchel, like she felt his imbalance through the space between them. She's walked this road before, or another like it. It's written in the way her steps never waste effort, the way she shifts her weight at just the right time to conserve strength. The boy is learning that too, slowly. The road teaches all of you in the same harsh voice. It gives no praise, no correction, only repetition, only consequences. You pass a dry stream bed, nothing more than a long scar in the land, the remnants of a place where water once lived. A few birds flit near it, quiet and cautious, feathers dulled by dust. The smell of dried herbs drifts on the air briefly. Someone in the caravan is chewing on leaves to keep nausea at bay. You consider doing the same, but decide against it. Your stomach is empty but settled. Food has become less of a hunger and more of a memory, something you remember wanting but no longer chase. You think of figs, warm, soft, and bursting on the tongue. You blink and the thought fades. The wind picks up again, soft at first, then stronger, and with it comes the dust. Not blinding, not yet, but enough to make you lower your scarf and narrow your eyes. The grains dance at ankle level, lifting in little spirals that vanish as quickly as they form. You feel it coating your teeth, your lips, even the creases of your eyelids. It's a part of you now, this dust. You've stopped brushing it off. To travel the royal road is to become the very earth that lines it. You carry the desert not just in your pack, but in your pores, your breath, your thoughts. A trader near you mutters a line from a poem, barely loud enough to hear. You catch only the end of it. Something about walking toward a place you'll never reach. His voice is soft, cracked by age or exhaustion, or both. He doesn't repeat it. He just keeps walking. You wonder what place he's thinking of. Home, maybe. Or something further than that, something imagined. You realize then how little anyone talks of their destination. It's the movement itself that becomes the story. The destination is private, sacred, or perhaps uncertain. Your knees ache as you lift your feet from a patch of soft sand and step onto another stretch of gravel. The change in texture jolts you slightly, just enough to remind you that you are real, still here, still moving. You take a slow breath, tasting the dust, and look ahead. There's a bend in the path. The first one in hours. You feel something stir in your chest. Not excitement, not even hope, just awareness. A shift, a new shape in the endless forward line. You follow it without question. The road doesn't ask for your approval, only your endurance. And so you give it. The bend in the road is so subtle that you might not have noticed it, were it not for the way the shadows moved. For hours, the path had drawn itself in a straight, relentless line, as though it feared distraction might pull you from your purpose. But now it curves gently to the left, and with it comes a change in the wind. It carries a new scent, bitter sage, dry bark, something faintly metallic that lingers just at the edge of recognition. You lift your eyes and squint into the brightness, watching how the trail disappears behind a ridge. It's not a steep climb, but it's just enough to make your muscles protest after so many miles of flat terrain. Around you, others adjust their pace, some leaning into the slope, others slowing with a weariness that speaks of long distances already endured. You feel the familiar weight on your shoulders shift again as you climb. The pack has molded to your body now like a part of you that never belonged but refuses to leave. Every step grinds dust into your sandals, works it deeper into the cracks of your heels. But there is something oddly comforting in the discomfort. It means you are still here, still moving. The boy walks beside his guardian now, their steps matched in a quiet rhythm that has nothing to do with speed and everything to do with survival. She places a steadying hand on his back when the path narrows, and he doesn't flinch at the contact. There's trust there, forged not from words, but from shared endurance. He carries the sitar across his chest now, the cloth binding tighter, a sign that the instrument has become more than a possession. It is a burden, yes, but also a tether to home, to memory, to self. At the top of the incline, the world opens. A shallow valley unfolds below, flanked by rock formations that resemble weathered teeth. The road continues through it, carving its way like a thread woven by the hand of some ancient god. A few scrubby trees dot the edge of the path, their roots clinging to the ground, like they too have been walking and simply decided to stay. You pause for a moment, catching your breath, and let your eyes adjust to the changing light. It's softer here, less harsh. The wind passes through the rocks and makes a low humming sound, like a voice lost in prayer. You descend slowly, careful not to twist an ankle on the loose stones. As you move down into the valley, the air thickens slightly, not with moisture, but with stillness. It feels different here. Quieter. The kind of quiet that presses against the ears and slows the breath. The kind of quiet that listens back. You don't speak. No one does. Even the animals fall into an unusual calm, their hooves making softer sounds on the packed dirt. You hear your own heartbeat again. Steady, unhurried, present. A traveler ahead of you stumbles and catches themselves quickly, muttering a quick apology to no one in particular. The rest of the group barely reacts. Mistakes are not sins here, they are expected. They are woven into the rhythm of the road like missed notes in a long song. You step around a rock and spot something glinting in the dust. A coin, half buried. You don't pick it up. Someone else will. Or the desert will keep it, as it keeps so many things. Lost hopes, forgotten names, promises made in the shade and broken in the sun. As you reach the floor of the valley, the heat eases, buffered by the rise of stone on either side. Shadows linger longer here, and you feel them against your arms like cool fingers. The lead trader pauses briefly, eyes scanning the path ahead. He nods once, then keeps going. That single motion is enough. You follow. The sun has shifted overhead, pulling the shadows eastward. Your stomach gives a quiet ache, a hollow throb that reminds you it has been too long since the last meal. Still, the hunger is manageable, like the thirst. Like the pain in your hips and the knot forming behind your shoulder blade. These things no longer demand your attention. They exist beside you, not against you. Travelers too in their own right. The valley narrows ahead. The rock walls lean in slightly, not threatening, but close. You draw your scarf tighter around your neck and press onward, feet kicking up little puffs of dust that drift behind you and vanish. The road continues. It always does. The path grew tighter with every step, the valley's arms folding inward until they felt more like ribs than ridges, closing around the caravan in a slow embrace. There was no threat in it. Not overtly, but there was something watchful about the way the rocks stood, as if they remembered every traveler who had passed through this place and waited to see what kind of memory you would leave behind. The walls bore ancient scars, wind-cut lines and sand-worn shapes, and the occasional symbol etched so faintly into the surface it was hard to tell if they were letters or simply the result of nature's quiet insistence. Sound behaved differently here. The hoofbeats of the camels softened into muffled thuds, and even the shifting of sandals against gravel became hushed, as though the valley itself asked for silence. You moved without speaking, your breath echoing faintly in your ears. The others did the same. Even the boy with the sitar, whose music had once served as a kind of heartbeat for the group, kept his instrument wrapped tightly, slung behind him like a burden he had no room for today. It wasn't fear that silenced you all, it was reverence. This stretch of road felt older than the rest, older than memory, as though it had not been carved but revealed, a seam in the world split open long ago and left to settle. You began to notice the way light behaved differently too. The sun, filtered through the high stone walls, came in thin shafts, sharp and precise. They painted the dust in silver and gave strange halos to the travelers ahead of you. The girl with the crimson scarf suddenly seemed like a figure from myth, her silhouette lit like stained glass. You blinked once, slowly, and when you looked again, she was just a girl again, trudging like the rest of you, her feet caked with the same grit and wear. The climb through the narrow pass was gradual, but your body felt it. Not in sharp pain, but in the way your breath came shorter, how your calves burned longer after each incline. The rocks offered little wind, and what breeze did come seemed to swirl in confusion, like it had forgotten which way to go. You tasted minerals in the air, the faint tang of iron or perhaps copper. It caught at the back of your throat and settled on your tongue like dust that couldn't be washed away. At a curve in the path, you saw a small shrine carved directly into the wall. It was little more than a hollowed niche, the edges crumbling with age, but inside was a stone shaped roughly into a human form, smooth from years of touch, faceless, with hands pressed together in eternal pleading. Someone had placed a sprig of dried herbs at its base, recently too. You paused only for a second and offered a glance, not a prayer. It felt wrong to ask anything here. Better to listen, better to pass quietly. By midday, the light above grew harsher, the sun now directly overhead, but visible only in slivers. You drank a measured sip of water and wiped your face with the edge of your sleeve. The cloth came away darker than you expected. Not blood, just dirt and sweat and the markings of a life lived on the road. Around you, the line of travelers stretched and bunched, each person adjusting to the shifting path. The guardian walked now with her arm draped lightly over the boy's shoulders. His head was low, not in pain, but in focus. Each step he took seemed chosen, deliberate. You admired that, the care he gave to moving forward. The road had stripped many of their grace, but not him. Eventually, the pass began to widen again, slowly, hesitantly. The stones fell back and the sky opened a little more, revealing the soft gradient of afternoon light. The silence held a moment longer, as if reluctant to release you. Then, bit by bit, sound returned, the call of a distant bird, the murmur of a whispered conversation, the soft creak of leather stretched over tired backs. You stepped into the light again, squinting slightly, and looked back once over your shoulder. The pass behind you was already disappearing into shadow. You had passed through it, and it had let you. Whatever test it offered, you had answered simply by continuing. The widening of the path brought not relief exactly, but something close to it, like the first slow inhale after holding your breath for too long. The valley had held you tightly, pressing around your ribs and skull with its closeness, and now that it had released you, your limbs felt loose and strange, like they were learning to move again in wider spaces. The sun, now freed from the interruptions of jagged stone walls, poured itself fully over the land. It touched everything: your face, the folds in your clothes, the corners of your eyes, and you squinted instinctively, pulling your scarf higher to shield the exposed skin. Before you stretched a plain of reddish earth, scattered with pale grasses and dry bushes that reached only ankle height. The road itself was harder here, more compact, marked clearly by the lines of iron-rimmed wheels and centuries of repetition. It curved gently eastward, tracing the low hills in a patient sweep. A breeze returned at last, and it moved differently now, not trapped or redirected by stone, but free to run over the surface of the world like an old friend returning to familiar paths. It lifted the dust behind you and tugged at the edges of your scarf, teasing the hem of your sleeves. For a moment, you let it touch your face and felt the salt it left behind as it dried your sweat. The others had slowed slightly after the pass. Not a full stop, but the kind of shared easing that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. Everyone felt it. The way tension slid from the shoulders, how breaths were taken more deeply, how the long line of walkers settled into a quieter, smoother rhythm. The boy walked more upright now, his sitar balanced again across his back, and his guardian had let her hand fall from his shoulder. They didn't speak, but their pace matched as if they had rehearsed it. You looked to the sky then, the vast sheet of it stretching above with no ceiling, The clouds had returned, high, thin streaks that caught the sunlight and blurred the edges of blue with soft white. They moved slowly, without urgency, the way clouds only move when they know they are being watched. You imagined that once, long ago, caravans crossing this land would have read those same patterns and predicted wind or rain or fortune from the curl of vapor. You tried to read them too, but they told you nothing. Or perhaps they told you what you already knew, that you would keep walking and the road would keep welcoming your steps. Ahead, in the far distance, you could just make out a rise in the land, not a mountain or even a hill really, but the kind of slope that often cradled rest stops, caravanserais, ruined outposts, water catchments shaped from stone. You said nothing of it to the others. Everyone had seen it already. You could tell by the way heads tilted subtly forward, the way steps seemed to carry a touch more momentum. Hope was never announced out here. It showed itself in posture, in the set of jaws and the speed of breath. Still, it sat far enough on the horizon that it might vanish again with the heat. A mirage, a promise not yet proven. Your feet ached again, not freshly, but with the dull persistence of repetition. The skin on your heel had blistered the day before, and now it split a little more with each step. You felt it, the sting followed by the throb, then the strange numbness that made you wonder whether pain could ever grow tired of itself. You adjusted your stride slightly to favor the other foot. The road accepted this change without comment. You passed a broken cartwheel half buried in sand, the wood splintered and faded grey with age. A single bolt still clung to the hub, rusted to a stubborn gleam. Someone had abandoned it long ago. You wondered if they had left it in anger or in quiet necessity. What they carried, who they were, whether they ever reached their destination or turned back to something lost. The heat pressed down again, but it was familiar now, a blanket rather than a blow. You wiped your forehead, took a shallow sip of water, and shifted your pack. The road rose slightly and you followed it. The sun reached its peak with the cruel slowness of something well practiced in dominance. It hovered directly overhead now, a heavy eye glaring down upon everything it touched. There was no shadow to speak of, no relief beneath a tree or a ledge, just the naked heat, thick and humming, pressing down from above and rising again from the ground in waves that bent the horizon. The world around you shimmered faintly as though the earth were breathing too quickly. The road beneath your feet no longer felt separate from you. It was part of you now, the texture of it, the rhythm, even the pain. You leaned slightly forward into your steps, not in haste, but in a kind of resignation. The caravan around you had settled into that peculiar trance that only heat and exhaustion can create. Faces were downturned, scarves drawn close, eyes narrowed to slits. Words were no longer exchanged. Breathing itself was a burden carefully measured. Each motion cost something, a swing of the arm, a turn of the neck, the lifting of a foot. Everything weighed more under that sun, even thought, even memory. The boy ahead had slowed again, though not out of weakness. He moved with a strange kind of grace now, like someone learning to dance through fire. His sitar still rested on his back, but he touched it now and then, almost unconsciously, as if its presence anchored him. His guardian walked at his side, her fingers brushing his sleeve whenever he veered too close to the edge of the trail. Neither of them looked up. Their focus was forward, but not fixed on anything visible. It was the forward of faith, of necessity. You wiped your brow with a sleeve already stiff with salt. The fabric rasped against your skin. Your lips were cracked, your mouth dry, despite the careful sips of water you took every hour. Even the water had changed, tasting of leather and warm metal, like it had absorbed the road itself. You thought again of figs, of fresh dates split open in the palm, of a cup of cool milk poured slowly. You blinked these thoughts away and concentrated on your feet. Then, as if summoned by the sheer need of it, the shape on the horizon became more distinct. It was not a mirage after all. The line of stone rising from the earth had angles too sharp, walls too stubborn to be a trick of the heat. A structure. You felt a stirring in your chest that was not quite relief, but something close. Your pace did not quicken. It couldn't. But your spine straightened slightly, your hands unclenched. You heard someone ahead let out a long breath, half sigh and half prayer. The sound traveled down the line like a signal. As the caravan crested a low ridge, the shape resolved into a familiar form. A caravanserai, walled and weathered, squat against the land like a beast curled in rest. Its walls were sun-bleached and pocked with time, but still they stood. The gate, though cracked and leaning slightly, was open. Beyond it, a glimpse of the shaded courtyard, the suggestion of a well, and, most promising of all, the sight of smoke rising from a cook fire. The scent was faint at first, but it drifted toward you now, rich and savoury, cutting through the dryness like a memory of comfort. Lentils, perhaps, or stewed lamb. You didn't care. Anything warm would do. No orders were given, no shouts, just a shared pull toward the promise of rest. You passed beneath the gate and stepped onto packed earth that was mercifully shaded. The change was immediate. The heat lifted slightly, the air shifted, your shoulders dropped. A man by the well handed you a small cloth soaked in cool water. You took it wordlessly, pressed it to your neck, and nearly groaned aloud from the relief. You found a place against the inner wall, dropped your pack, and slid down until you were seated with your back against stone. The pain in your legs sang sharply as they bent, then slowly faded into a dull hum. Around you, others did the same, folding into themselves, unbuckling straps, loosening scarves. A dog wandered through the courtyard, sniffing packs, tail wagging, lazily. The boy and his guardian settled nearby, her arm resting across her knee, his eyes closed in brief escape. The road had allowed you this, a moment, a pause. You closed your eyes too, just for a breath longer than usual. The stillness inside the caravanserai did not feel like silence. It felt like breath held in reverence, like the first moment after music ends, but before the applause begins. There was a weight to it, but not a burden, more like a blanket drawn over the shoulders after too many hours exposed to wind and sun. The noise of the journey, the low shuffling of feet and the huff of animals and the dry coughs of those too tired to hide their pain, faded behind these walls as if they belonged to a different world altogether. You let your back press against the cool stone, your limbs unfolding with slow, almost reverent care. It felt as though your body might melt into the wall if you stayed still long enough. Someone had already begun to ladle food into shallow bowls. You watched as steam curled up in thin lines, delicate and ghost-like, catching the light where it passed. The scent grew stronger now. Lentils, yes, but also onions, cooked down to sweetness, and a hint of cumin that lingered in the back of your throat before you'd even tasted it. You hadn't realized how hungry you were until the smell reached you. Your stomach responded with a low, unmistakable growl. You rose slowly, not wanting to lose the precious little energy you'd stored from resting, and shuffled toward the cook station with your empty bowl in hand. There was no need to speak. The man behind the pot, face weathered like old bark, simply nodded and filled your bowl. He offered a small square of flatbread too, cracked and warm. You took it with a grateful incline of the head and found a patch of ground near the well to sit again. The first bite was not memorable because it tasted extraordinary, but because it was warm and real and solid. The lentils clung to the bread, soaked through just enough to soften it. You ate slowly, not out of discipline, but to make the moment last. Every mouthful reminded you that you were still capable of receiving comfort, even if it was simple, even if it came only once a day. The boy and his guardian sat nearby, similarly quiet, focused on their bowls. His face had regained more color now, and there was even a faint flush along his cheeks. She watched him as he ate, not mothering, not hovering, but making sure the rhythm of his bites didn't slow. You noticed her eyes linger on the scar near his collarbone for a second longer than usual, and something passed through her expression. Perhaps grief, perhaps memory, perhaps nothing at all. It was gone before you could place it. The courtyard filled with a kind of life that felt entirely different from the road. Children too young to walk the full journey now tottered between resting parents. A merchant nearby unrolled a small carpet and began sorting spices from tightly wrapped bundles, the colors of saffron and sumac bright even in the shade. A woman hummed while brushing the dust from her sandals, a tune so soft you almost mistook it for wind. There was no urgency here, no forward pull, just a moment suspended. You drank from the well, cupping your hands to catch the cool water. It tasted faintly of stone and iron, but it was clean and it was cold. The way it moved over your tongue brought something close to peace. You splashed your face, your neck, the insides of your wrists, and let the drops linger. Others around you did the same, their motions unhurried. Time had a different shape inside these walls. It folded, stretched, softened. When your belly was full and your limbs a little lighter, you laid back again, this time with your pack as a pillow. Your eyes traced the stonework above, the gentle curve of the arches, the faded etchings that told stories no one here could probably read anymore. You wondered who had built this place, how long it had stood, how many hundreds or thousands had rested here before you. The idea that you were part of that long line didn't make you feel small, it made you feel held. You closed your eyes, just for a moment, just long enough to listen to the way the walls sighed in the breeze, the way distant laughter echoed without demanding attention. The road had paused, and so had you. As the sun crept downward and dusk tiptoed in behind it, the mood within the courtyard shifted. The quiet that had come with rest did not vanish, but instead deepened, turned inward, as if everyone now spoke with thoughts rather than words. The long light of evening laid soft golden bars across the stone floor, and the shadows they cast grew longer than the people who made them. You sat with your knees drawn up, chin resting on your arm, watching those shadows lean across the world like old men bending towards sleep. A soft breeze stirred the dust just enough to keep it from settling too heavily. In the corners of the walls where sun met shade, you could hear it whisper. There was a moment, brief and unannounced, when everything felt still enough that you wondered if you'd stepped out of time. The story that had floated through the courtyard earlier had ended, though you couldn't remember exactly when, and now its rhythm lived on only in the tapping of someone's foot, the absent drumming of fingers against cloth. The kind of residue stories always leave behind. You let yourself close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to allow the quiet to settle over your skin like a sheet. When you opened them, the light had changed once more. The sky had begun its soft descent into violet. Not the dark violet of night, but the bruised, blooming kind that stretches across the edges of evening like a sigh. A few stars had arrived, small and uncertain, barely noticeable except to those who looked for them. You looked. You always looked. There was comfort in knowing they were still there, waiting behind the blue all day, patient as the road. Someone lit a lamp near the inner archway, its flame flickering weakly before catching hold. The glow that spilled from it wasn't strong enough to cast proper shadows, but it gave the courtyard a center again, something to orient toward. A second lamp followed, then a third, each one adding to the warmth rather than piercing the dark. The cook returned to the fire, not to serve a full meal this time, but to heat something simple. A pot of tea, maybe. The scent drifted across the space like a gentle hand. Mint and smoke and the faint sweetness of cardamom. You breathed it in and exhaled slowly, as if the smell alone could carry away some of your ache. The boy had finally begun to play again. Not loudly, and not for an audience, but to himself, just off to the side, his knees tucked up beneath the sitar's body. His fingers moved with care, as though coaxing the notes out from where they'd hidden. The music that came forth was tentative at first, fragile like blown glass, but it grew as he played, not in volume, but in shape. It unfolded, spread like water over stone. The guardian sat near him, her head bowed slightly, eyes closed, not in sleep, but in thought, her lips moving with the rhythm, though she made no sound. You watched them both, the way the light caught in her scarf, the way his fingers barely paused between chords. And for the first time since you'd joined this caravan, the space between you and them felt less like a wall and more like a bridge. You reached into your scarf and took out the last fig. It had softened slightly with your body's warmth, and when you bit into it, the sweetness bloomed across your tongue like a second twilight. You chewed slowly, watching as the courtyard breathed and shifted around you. People spoke now in low tones. A trader hummed to himself while brushing dust from his shoes. A girl braided her mother's hair in tight, rhythmic pulls. Two young men traded jokes in a language you didn't understand, but felt the rhythm of just the same. They laughed quietly, leaning toward one another as though the sound itself might escape if they weren't careful. You closed your eyes again, this time for longer, and let the music and voices rise and fall around you. They didn't ask anything of you, they just continued. And for the first time in many days, you felt not only like a traveler, but like someone who belonged, if only briefly, to a story shared. The stars arrived without ceremony. One by one they took their places, old companions, stepping quietly onto a familiar stage, needing no introduction. Their light was cold, but not distant. It had a softness to it, like water touching the rim of a dry cup, subtle and slow. Above the caravanserai, the sky had darkened into its fullest blue, the kind of color that feels heavier than black, as though it carries the weight of everything unsaid between the living and the long departed. You lay with your head resting on the bundle of your outer cloak, eyes turned upward, watching those quiet sparks arrange themselves into old shapes. Constellations you barely remembered the names of, if they ever had names at all. They simply were, and that was enough. The courtyard had quieted again, not into the same stillness of afternoon, but a new, sleepier hush. People spoke in half-whispers now, their voices stretched by fatigue and gentleness. A baby cried once and was quickly soothed. The fire in the center had settled into a ring of glowing coals, more red than orange, casting flickers of warmth and light that danced like lazy moths across the stone walls. You could hear the soft clicking of someone rearranging supplies for the morning, careful not to disturb the others. Sandals shifted, a throat cleared, then stillness again. The boy had stopped playing some time ago, and now the sitar rested beside him, nestled in the crook between his body and his guardian's folded shawl. He sat with his knees drawn up to his chest, eyes wide in that way only children's eyes can be when night falls and the world feels too big to grasp, but too beautiful to fear. His guardian sat beside him, silent, her head tilted back to watch the sky as well. The lines on her face had softened under the starlight, and her mouth curved slightly, as if she were remembering something from a life before this one. A story she hadn't told anyone in years. You found yourself watching them more than the stars, the way their shapes leaned slightly toward one another, the way stillness had formed a kind of invisible thread between them. In a world like this, where everything was in motion, such threads were rare. Most connections frayed quickly on the road. People joined, separated, disappeared. But this boy and his guardian had a stillness that held fast, even when the road tried to shake it loose. A wind passed through then, cool and soft, as though the land itself had sighed. It stirred the corners of your blanket, lifted the edge of the boy's scarf, and carried with it the faintest scent of something green, perhaps a grove nearby, perhaps just a trick of the mind. You closed your eyes and let the air pass over your face, feeling it carry away the sweat and dust clinging to your skin. Even the ache in your legs had dulled now, replaced by a kind of hum, the fatigue of a day spent honestly, pain without panic. Somewhere near the gate, a low conversation murmured on between two older travelers. You could not make out their words, but the tone told you everything. It was the language of sharing, of comparing stories not for pride, but for comfort. You imagined them talking of other roads, older roads, of a different caravanserai where they once watched the stars with someone long gone. You hoped, selfishly, that someone might speak of this night too, years from now. That this moment, quiet and ordinary, might become part of another story whispered on another road. The dog that had wandered in earlier, curled at the base of the well now, its breathing slow and steady. It twitched in its sleep, chasing something in the dream realm only dogs know. A few steps away, a trader pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders and adjusted the small wooden box he used as a pillow. You did the same, shifting just enough to let the stone beneath you cradle your spine. It wasn't comfortable, not truly, but it was enough. The boy finally spoke then, his voice soft and uncertain. Just a question, directed to the stars more than anyone near. You didn't catch all of it, just the wonder in the asking. His guardian didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was a murmur, steady and warm, a few words only. You imagined they were neither right nor wrong, but enough to quiet his thoughts. He nodded, tucked his chin against his arms, and let his eyes drift shut. You watched him for a moment longer, then turned your gaze skyward once more. The stars had rearranged themselves slightly, but they were still there, holding vigil, patient as the road. The night held steady, not quite cold, but cooling enough that your breath became visible in tiny clouds when you exhaled slowly into the air. You turned onto your side, wrapping the thin shawl tighter around your shoulders, not out of discomfort, but because the embrace of fabric made you feel a little more human, a little less like a thing made of dust and silence. Sleep had not claimed you entirely. It came and went in small waves, nudging at your thoughts but never pulling you under completely. Around you, others stirred in the same way, half asleep, half aware, curled like commas against the punctuation of the road's brief pause. Somewhere nearby, a baby whimpered, not loudly, just the soft sound of uncertainty. A few steps away, a man coughed into his blanket. The embers in the fire pit cracked faintly as another log gave in to heat and crumbled to a glowing hush. You drifted again, but not into dreams. Not fully. What came to you was softer than a dream, and older. You remembered your mother's hands, how they used to smell faintly of flour and wood ash. You remembered the sound of water being poured into a copper basin in the morning, the long stretch of your father's shadow across a courtyard when he returned from the fields. These images rose and fell inside you, not asking to be held, just passing through like leaves on a slow river. The boy with the sitar had finally dozed off. You could tell by the slack in his fingers, the way his head tilted gently toward his guardian's shoulder. She hadn't moved for a long time, as if she feared that any shift might break the spell of rest wrapped around him. Her eyes, still open, reflected the firelight in such a way that it made her seem caught between worlds, awake but elsewhere. You watched the way her fingers brushed the edge of his sleeve now and then, not to wake him, but to reassure herself he was still there. You turned your eyes upward again. The stars had grown sharper now, the sky clearer than before. The moon had risen too, not high, but bright enough to draw silver lines along the stone. It painted shapes onto the sleeping bodies stretched across the courtyard. A woman lay with her child tucked tightly into her side, both of them wrapped in the same worn quilt. A trader had used his cart as shelter, his boots sticking out from beneath the axle. Another man had tucked himself between two saddle bundles, as if their shape reminded him of home. You noticed then that someone had placed a tiny bundle of dried flowers near the shrine carved into the wall, the one you had passed earlier without offering a word. Lavender, maybe? Or sage. The offering wasn't fresh, but it had been placed with care. You wondered if it was a ritual or just a habit someone carried from another place. That small act moved something in you. A reminder, perhaps, that even on roads meant for trade and survival, there was room for beauty, for remembrance, for the sacred. Your limbs began to grow heavier. The pressure behind your eyes deepened. Sleep tugged at you again, not demanding but inviting. This time, you allowed it. Let yourself slip beneath its surface. You did not dream of destinations nor of anything the road had shown you. Instead, you dreamt of quiet things. A stream flowing under a fig tree. The hum of bees against your wrist. The smell of warm stones after rain. The sensation of being small again, held not in fear but in comfort, in safety. And when you turned slightly in your sleep, the dust beneath you shifted gently, as if even the earth acknowledged your rest. The stars above did not blink or fade. They stayed exactly where they had always been, marking the passage of time without interrupting it. Around you, others drifted too, each wrapped in their own fragments of sleep, their own echoes of elsewhere. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Only the night holding you all. Morning arrived not with trumpets or brilliant colour, but with the quietest shift imaginable, like a curtain being slowly drawn aside by invisible fingers. Before the light itself, there came the air, cooler, gentler, carrying with it the unmistakable hush of something beginning again. It slipped over the stone walls of the caravanserai like a polite guest returning home, ruffling blankets, brushing cheeks, stirring hair that had settled in the stillness of sleep. You didn't open your eyes right away. You felt it first, the way the wind had changed its tone, the way your breath no longer fogged as thickly in the dark, the way your body, though still tired, no longer sagged beneath its weight. The stars had not yet vanished entirely, but they had begun their soft retreat. Only the boldest among them remained, blinking faintly against the sky's slow exhale into grey. Somewhere in the distance, a bird gave a cautious chirp, not song but suggestion, like it was testing whether the world was ready to listen. Another moment passed, then a second bird joined, then a third, and suddenly it was not silence that wrapped the courtyard, but a fragile kind of music, the kind made only when the earth is very still and very honest. You turned your head slowly, feeling the resistance of your muscles like paper that had been folded too long. Around you, shapes began to stir. A child tucked her head deeper beneath her mother's shawl. A trader sat up with a groan, scratching his beard and blinking against a sun not yet risen. The dog yawned, jaws stretched wide, then circled twice before settling again, as if to say, "Not yet, not quite yet." The boy with the sitar had shifted in his sleep, his body curled now toward the instrument as though it had sung him to sleep, and he was still clinging to its final note. His guardian had not moved much during the night, but her eyes were open now, not startled or urgent, just present, the way old trees are present. Still, quiet, observing. You sat up and drew your knees to your chest, wrapping your arms around them to hold in what little warmth the night had allowed to linger. Your breath came in long, even pulls, and the ache in your limbs reminded you that they had earned their rest. The fire in the courtyard had become nothing more than a low mound of ash, still warm if you reached for it. A traveller nearby prodded at the embers with a stick and added a few scraps of bark. The fire did not flare. It woke, like the rest of you, slowly, cautiously, with a kind of quiet dignity. Then came the scent. Not of spice or stew this time, but of water. Not the stagnant kind found in barrels or leather flasks, but running water, drawn up from the well fresh, before the world had even opened its eyes. A woman knelt at the stone circle, pouring a splash of it over her face and arms, the droplets catching faint glimmers of the growing dawn. Her hands moved with familiarity, not hurried, not lazy. She had done this many mornings before and would do it many more. One by one, others joined her. Rituals emerged like birds from the brush. A father smoothing his son's hair. A girl tying and retying the strap of her sandal until it sat just right on her ankle. A merchant wiping dust from his coins with a scrap of linen, as though polish could persuade fortune. You found your own small ritual reaching into your pack to check the contents once again. You knew what was there, had known it since yesterday, but the act of touching each item, cloth, bread, a worn letter, offered reassurance. These small confirmations helped you prepare, not for what had passed, but for what was yet to unfold. The boy sat up at last, blinking against the pale sky, and stretched in a way that reminded you of cats, graceful, unconcerned. His guardian handed him a piece of dried fruit, and he accepted it without words, chewing slowly as he stared at the horizon. You looked there too. The line between earth and sky had softened. It would not be long now before the sun pushed its first light over that edge and claimed the day. And when it came, you would be ready. The sun rose without apology. There was no theatrical burst of color, no sudden wash of gold across the world. Instead, it climbed steadily, patiently, as if it knew that it had done this before and would do it again. You watched it happen not with awe, but with the quiet recognition one gives to an old habit. The sky brightened by degrees, first the pale blue of faded fabric, then deepening into something warmer, more forgiving. The caravanserai stirred around you like a house, shaking off sleep. Shadows shortened, stone warmed, and, slowly, people became people again rather than curled shapes in blankets. You stood, stretching your arms toward the waking sky, feeling the pull along your sides, the small crackle of your back responding. The dust beneath your feet had changed texture overnight. No longer loose and dry, it had settled into a firmer crust where dew had kissed it before vanishing. You took a step and heard the satisfying crunch beneath your sandal. The sound anchored you, reminded you that the pause had ended. The road had been patient, but it was waiting. People began to pack, not with rush, but with purpose. The sounds of gathering were their own kind of music, canvas folding, rope tightening, flasks being shaken to judge how much water remained. You folded your blankets slowly, smoothing each crease, not because it mattered, but because the care helped shape your mind for movement. It reminded you that though the path ahead would offer no softness, your choices within it still mattered. That was a kind of power too. The boy was awake and humming quietly to himself as he rubbed his eyes with the back of his wrist. His guardian had already begun preparing his things, checking the sitar for any damage, brushing the dust from its strings. He didn't rush her. He watched. There was a kind of silent gratitude in him that didn't need to be voiced. She caught his eye once, offered him a half smile that said more than a dozen words might. He nodded and returned to humming, the tune simple and meandering, like the memory of something heard in childhood. Breakfast, if it could be called that, was modest. A heel of bread, softened in well water, a few nuts, a slice of dried apricot. You ate slowly, letting the food stretch across the morning, savouring not just the taste but the act of eating with others nearby. You noticed how people no longer looked inward but upward and outward. Their eyes sought the sky, the hills, the animals. They were returning to the world after the long pause of rest. Even the wind had changed direction. It now came from the west, pushing gently at your back as though to remind you where you were meant to go. The dog, having accepted its temporary family, trotted alongside the youngest child in the group, tail wagging in a lazy rhythm. It had found its place too, even if only for now. The traders gathered near the gate, speaking in low tones as they reviewed their loads and checked the weight of goods still intact. A few had traded during the night, cloaks swapped for herbs, spices for a carved talisman, but no one spoke of gains or losses. Transactions on the road were about survival, not profit. The caravan assembled itself with the ease of habit. Packs lifted, belts tightened, eyes scanned the trail ahead. You joined the line without ceremony, placing your steps within the path of those before you. It felt less like following and more like belonging, as if the road had accepted your presence without question. The boy and his guardian took their usual place nearby, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder before falling back to her side. He looked up at the hills ahead, then down at his feet, then straight forward, and you recognized the rhythm of someone preparing for more than a walk, for something larger, for continuation. As you passed through the gate, you glanced back once, not for sentiment, but for understanding. The walls stood unchanged, neither welcoming nor resentful. They had done what they were built for, held the night at bay, offered pause, bore witness. They would do it again long after you had forgotten this particular sunrise. You turned forward again and stepped once more into motion. The road greeted your feet like an old friend who never asked why you left or where you'd been. It simply walked beside you again, without condition. The sky overhead had softened into a hue that could only belong to early morning in the desert, a pale kind of gold tinged with powdery blue, the kind of sky that carried no threat, but also no promise. It simply was immense and still, like a dome laid gently over the waking earth. The sun had not yet grown sharp in its brightness, and for now, the world was walking in the gentler space between warmth and heat. Your feet settled into a rhythm quickly, your steps matching the crunch and shuffle of the others around you. The road itself stretched wide here, more open than before, the hills pulled back on either side as if to let you pass without resistance. It felt like walking through a thought that had not yet formed fully, a path unfolding one breath at a time. The caravan moved like a long, silent river. No one spoke much. Voices in the morning were rare, kept close like warmth beneath your scarf. There was something sacred about the early hours, as though speech might fracture the delicate spell the earth was casting. Even the animals were subdued. The camels blinked slowly, their heads bobbing in quiet assent to the day ahead. The donkeys carried their bundles with familiar resignation, and the dogs, still stretching the sleep from their bones, trotted beside them without complaint. You found yourself just behind the boy and his guardian again. She moved with the same economy of motion you had grown used to, her steps even and sure, her gaze forward, but always alert. He walked, with one hand resting against the setar strapped to his side, the other swinging slightly, fingers brushing the hem of his tunic now and then. He was humming again, that same quiet tune from the night before, but now it had changed shape. It wasn't just melody anymore, it was rhythm, the soundtrack of feet on stone and wind over cloth, the subtle song of morning stitched into motion. The road began to slope gently downward, revealing a narrow valley ahead, dotted with low shrubs and sun-bleached stones. In the distance, you saw the thin ribbon of a stream, or what might have once been a stream, now a dry bed winding its way through the rocks like a forgotten signature. A few trees grew there still, stubborn things with gnarled roots and crooked limbs, leaves faded to a pale, dusty green. One of the older men in the caravan pointed toward them, murmuring something to the woman beside him. You didn't catch the words, but the gesture itself was enough. They would rest there soon. The boy paused once, bending to tie the strap on his sandal that had come loose, and his guardian waited without needing to be asked. You slowed with them, not out of duty but instinct, and when he stood again, he gave you a quick, sleepy smile, then turned back to the road. That smile stayed with you longer than it should have. It wasn't particularly bright or knowing, it was just real. And in a world built on transactions and caution, a real smile was worth its own kind of weight. By the time you reached the trees, the sun had begun to warm in earnest. The shade cast by the sparse branches wasn't deep, but it was enough to draw people in like water. The caravan didn't stop entirely. Some paused briefly to sip water or adjust their loads. Others pressed on without a word. You sat for a moment beneath one of the larger trees, its bark rough against your back, and chewed slowly on a strip of dried meat, not for hunger, but to keep your jaw moving, to feel something grounded. The boy sat nearby, legs folded, tracing lines in the dirt with a twig. His guardian crouched beside him, dabbing a damp cloth against his neck, whispering something too soft to hear. In that space, time stretched a little. The wind made small music through the leaves, and the sound of distant footsteps softened into a kind of lullaby. You didn't need to speak. The quiet between you all wasn't empty, it was full. Full of understanding, full of patience, full of the knowledge that the road had no interest in speed. It simply asked that you keep walking. Eventually you rose again. The path curved eastward, leading toward a ridge that would bring the day's first real challenge. The slope wasn't steep, but it was long, and the sun, growing bolder now, began to press down with greater intent. Your pack shifted on your shoulders, sweat formed at your temples, but your feet kept time. Each step forward became its own kind of meditation. You watched the dust rise in little puffs, saw how the shadows shortened, with each passing minute. The world was wide again, and you were inside it, not as a visitor, but as a thread in its weave. When you crested the ridge, the horizon revealed itself once more, and with it a faint glimmer in the distance. A sliver of silver low to the ground. It might have been water, or perhaps a metal roof catching the light. You couldn't be sure. The boy shaded his eyes and looked too, and his guardian followed his gaze with a quiet nod. Whatever it was, it would be your next stop, your next pause, your next story. And so, without speaking, the caravan kept moving. The road unspooled ahead, steady and long, a line drawn across the land by hands you'd never meet, but whose presence you could feel in every bend and stone. You walked not for destination, but for continuity. For the quiet truth that as long as your feet moved forward, you were part of something larger than exhaustion, something older than the heat, something that waited for you in the hush between steps. By late morning, the faint shimmer that had clung to the horizon had grown more defined, no longer just a reflection of sunlight or wishful thinking, but something real. Buildings began to take shape where before there had only been haze. Low walls, flat roofs, and domes that caught the light like pale coins scattered on the earth. You felt the shift before you saw it fully. The caravan's pace tightened slightly, not into urgency, but anticipation. People stood taller, heads turned forward more often. There was something in all of them that responded to the nearness of rest, even if it would be brief. You sensed it in your own breath too, the way your ribs lifted more deeply with each inhale, how your shoulders felt suddenly aware of the dust they carried. Arrival, even a temporary one, was always more than just reaching a place. It was the moment the body allowed itself to hope for comfort. The settlement, when it came fully into view, was neither large nor grand. A trading post, really, shaped more by necessity than beauty. Mud brick walls patched in places with straw and cloth, market stalls built from scrap wood and old rugs, a few houses huddled together like cousins seeking shelter from the sun. There was no gate, no guards, no announcement, just people, and the quiet noise of lives in motion. A woman drawing water from a well, a child chasing a chicken with determined glee, a group of boys crouched in the shade, playing some game of stones and chalk. The caravan did not disrupt this rhythm. It joined it, folded into it like another thread woven into the fabric of daily life. You stepped into the edge of the town with the others, and the first thing that hit you was the smell. Not unpleasant, just dense. Sweat, wood smoke, drying herbs, earth warmed by sun and pressed under feet. It was the smell of habitation, of people who had stopped walking and started tending. Your stomach tightened in response, not from hunger alone, but from the memory of what it meant to eat while sitting at a table, even if that table was nothing more than a plank of wood balanced on stones. The boy beside you perked up visibly, the stiffness in his steps melting a little, curiosity sparking in his eyes as he scanned the narrow alleys and colourful bundles of cloth strung between poles. His guardian kept a steady hand on his shoulder, steering him gently toward a shaded corner where others from the caravan had begun to gather. You followed, grateful again for the consistency of their presence. Around you, traders began to unload, their voices rising in the familiar cadence of negotiation. A jar of dates was examined, a bolt of indigo fabric held up to the light, a crate of dried fish opened, sniffed, then closed again with a satisfied grunt. You were given a bowl of something warm, not unlike the lentils from the caravanserai, though this batch had been seasoned with something unfamiliar, a hint of citrus maybe, or dried sumac. You ate slowly, letting your back rest against the cool wall of a building, watching the scene unfold in front of you. There was no rush here, not really. Everyone knew the road would still be there tomorrow. For now, it was enough to sit, to drink cool water, to let your legs forget for a moment the rhythm of marching. The boy wandered a few steps away, drawn to a group of children his age who were gathered around a low table scattered with hand-carved figures. His guardian let him go this time, watching with a half-smile as he crouched beside them, his shyness dissolving under the gravity of shared play. She sat beside you, without a word, and you passed her what was left of your meal. She took it, nodding her thanks, and for a while, neither of you spoke. It was the kind of silence that needed no explanation. It simply allowed. Somewhere a bell rang softly, not a warning, just a signal of the hour. A boy ran past carrying a stack of folded cloth, his sandals slapping against the ground in joyous rhythm. The light had begun to lean now, casting longer shadows, the golden hour beginning its quiet approach. Soon it would be time to prepare again, to gather, to fold, to sling bags back over sore shoulders and face the next stretch of path. But not just yet. You looked out across the small town, its colours muted by dust but bright in spirit. The wind shifted, carrying laughter and the scent of baking flatbread toward you. And for that moment, just one moment, you felt what it was to not be passing through, but to simply be. To sit in the middle of somewhere without fear or demand, and feel the air wrap gently around your tired body like a familiar song. Evening arrived gently, spreading itself across the small town in layers of deepening blue and amber, as if the sky were tucking in the earth for the night. The hum of activity had faded to a softer rhythm now. Stalls closed one by one. Lamps flickered into life above doorways and between wooden beams, casting golden circles onto the walls and cobblestones below. You sat quietly in the same spot, your bowl now empty, your limbs heavier but no longer aching. Around you, the caravan had begun to settle for the night again, forming loose circles of blankets and whispered stories, their voices folding into the fabric of this place as if they had always belonged to it. The boy had rejoined his guardian, his eyes bright from play, a small carved figure clutched in his hand like a secret. She tucked him under her shawl, and he leaned into her without a word, the way someone does when words are unnecessary. You watched them, not with envy, but with a kind of quiet gratitude that such moments still existed in a world so often ruled by distance and departure. The soft rustle of cloth, the sound of his small breath evening out, the steadiness in her gaze as she looked toward the darkening road. All of it folded into the end of the day like a closing sentence. You leaned your head back against the wall and let your eyes drift shut just for a moment. And in that moment you didn't think of where you had started or how far you had come. You didn't count the days or recall the discomforts. You thought only of the sound of feet on gravel, of the taste of figs and dust, of music played without an audience, of the way the stars had looked when sleep wrapped itself around your bones in the courtyard far behind you. You thought of the warmth that came not from fire, but from the presence of others who did not ask who you had been before the road. And slowly, that presence filled you, not with noise, not with story, but with a soft, steady knowing. The road would go on tomorrow. It always did. It would unroll itself before your feet like a question with no need for an answer. And when you walked it, you would carry this place with you, not the name, not the map of it, but the feeling. The way the light had fallen across the boy's face, the hush in the air before first steps. The look in a stranger's eyes that said, without speaking, we are walking the same way. And in that perhaps you had already arrived.